Hello there everybody, and your second video of the day, or if you're just watching this for the first time, hello. And we continue quickie articles because this one is now focusing on Chris and negligence. And believe you me guys, the train doesn't just stop just because we are off the beaten track. So let's get started, shall we? Oh yeah, big price items. Please buy those things so I can get this car worked on right now today. That's kind of just how Chris talks, by the way. But the reason, well, it should become obvious why Chris has to beg for things. But let's get to the point, shall we? Merriam-Webster defines negligence as failure to exercise the care that a reasonably prudent person would exercise in like circumstances. A negligent person frequently finds themselves in trouble caused by their own inability to identify a problem and deal with it properly. Chris is in no short supply of negligence, and it frequently leads him to trolling himself. Examples of Chris's negligence. There are several examples of Chris's negligence that have negatively impacted himself, his family, his community, and his fans. But most of all, himself. The effects of his negligence have ranged from letting his room go, to getting his eBay banned, to even possibly burning down his own house. Chris's failure to properly deal with problems often leads him into tricky situations that bring humorous responses. A significant portion of Chris's content can be attributed either directly or indirectly to his negligence. Vehiculars. Which, ironically, you could almost use the term vehiculars as, like, plural. There's more than one, so vehicles. I'm sorry, guys, I thought that was quite clever the way I phrased that. Anyways, Chris has a long history of vehicular struggles. His first car, the original Sonshu, went through horror as it was revealed in October 2010 that he went well over a year without changing the oil. Unsurprisingly, the car didn't last much longer. Fast forwarding to 2018 in July, it became clear that Chris failed to learn his lesson. In a begging video, Chris revealed that his 2010 Ford Focus was heating up and wouldn't start. Despite fans sending him money to get the car fixed, it died 3 months later. It was reported by the captain that the car's engine was permanently broken, being that the car had only clocked up 110,000 miles. So it's likely that Chris's negligence was the cause of its untimely demise. 110,000 miles? Chris, I'm not joking, guys. You should a 2010 Ford Focus should be able to clock up like at least 400,000 miles before it's on its last legs. I'm sorry, there is no reason why it would die at a quarter of that. I am so sorry. What on earth did Chris do? Did Chris put diesel when it was a petrol or something like that? Is that what happened? In 2021, a fan snapped a picture of the 4th iteration of Sonshu in the wild, featuring a dented rear door and smashed rear windshield with a plastic covering. Another fan texted Chris about the damage done to the van. Chris responded, revealing that he had backed into the trailer of a big rig. Yeah, that's resulting in that. And in case you're wondering how Chris somehow didn't manage to see it, well, that's probably a question Chris should be able to ask you, because it's an 8-ton big rig. It's not a packet of peanuts now, is it? Finances. We'll be covering more of this when it comes to Chris and money, but here we go. Beginning in 2014, Chris took to eBay as a means to supplement his tugboat. Capitalizing on his internet legacy, Chris began producing solitary medallions, custom amiibo commissions, autographed photos, family heirlooms, relics of fail, and several other items. Almost as soon as Chris started ramping up his eBay presence, buyers began complaining on eBay. Feedback is incredibly important. Anything short of 90% positive feedback is considered very poor. And If enough complaints are levied against the seller, eBay will take action. Chris struggled to maintain an 85% positive feedback percentage. Why is this the case, you may be saying? Well, get a load of this. Many buyers complained that Chris was taking too long to ship items, of items coming in broken due to faulty packaging, or of outright not receiving purchased items altogether. One buyer even reported being sent an empty envelope after purchasing a bootleg Pokemon game from Chris in March of 2018. So it wasn't even a legitimate game, and there wasn't even anything inside. What do you have to say about that, Chris? These complaints levied against Chris frequently caused his PayPal account to become frozen, preventing him from pulling funds out. This enraged Chris and resulted in him getting into scuffles with various buyers. One notorious example was when a buyer, referred to as Mr. Smith, opened up a dispute after Chris failed to make and ship a Sonichu medallion and commission with the specified 2-week period that Chris had set out, resulting in Chris's PayPal account getting frozen. In response, Chris doxed the buyer on Facebook. In case you're wondering why anyone would do that, well, that is a good question. Chris then produced to send an art of an exasperated Sonichu, along with an angry-eyed Sonichu medallion. The buyer, refusing to lift the dispute until Chris sent the item described in the listing, eventually received a proper Sonichu medallion along with a full refund from eBay. Chris's eBay exploits eventually came to an end in June of 2019, as eBay finally restricted his accounts after years of complaints. In 2015, Chris began using Etsy as an alternative to eBay after breaking the site's rules too many times. Things went as per usual, until Chris purchased a PlayStation 4 in March 2016, which sucked his attention away from his Etsy orders and led to him ignoring several of them, often for months at a time. This caused his Etsy shop to be eventually shut down in June. Chris would return to Etsy, however, in 2020 with the help of Prater, but the quality of his shipments and items haven't improved much. What do you expect? Art. Or fart, as this should be. Chris has always viewed Sonichu and the series he headlines as his pride and joy, but to call his updates infrequent or inconsistent is an understatement. While personally attributing his slipshod schedule to the idea that his inspiration comes in and out, whatever that means, while on the surface is something that does affect those with creative persuasions, Chris has been known, however, to go vast lengths of time without any news on the progress of his work. The most glaring example of this was Sonichu issue 11, a book first mentioned and conceived in 2009, that was effectively abandoned twice over the staggeringly long course of its production. Once in 2010, the wake of the infamously divisive Sonichu issue 10, and again 5 years later, shortly after Chris summoned up all the willpower to dust off his work and after he was paid to produce more pages by 2 separate parties. A delay that lasted 2 more years with little in the way of clear explanation. In the Alec Benson Leary saga, over the course of numerous phone calls, Alec frequently took Chris to task for his lack of consistent work ethic. In particular, he emphasized the importance of keeping to a schedule to maintain a constant level of external interest in his output. There, he attributed his diminished productivity to the existence and pressure of outside stressors. More specifically, he pinned the blame for his creative drought on the existence of ads on the Wikipedia, the presence of which proved to be so troublesome that he couldn't stand to look at them, and hence couldn't use the site to upload his work. This simply proves how easy it is for Chris to be sidelined or to put off work simply because other factors make him feel vaguely uncomfortable. In the years since, he has often said that he hasn't taken up producing his comic due to the lingering presence of various external factors, all of which can be boiled down to stress / just didn't really want to do them. Another likely reason for this crushing negligence, despite Chris's myriad explanations, is his lack of timeliness, is that Solitude isn't a work that's held aloft by any real creative inspiration on his part. You know, if somebody ever said that about my work, I would have been absolutely crushed. But then again, I don't I don't have any emotional attachment to my work whatsoever, so I don't. So there's that. Most of the time, it's a semi-autobiographical account of Chris's own life wearing the garb of a nonsensical fantasy realm. While the passing of his father in late 2011 doubtlessly impacted his drive, a combination of factors such as a lack of anything going on in his life anyway, lingering discomfort regarding the events of Solitude 10, and its perceived violation of his personal imaginary world, and Chris's own enduring laziness, even when paid $1,000 with the express purposes of making 100 new pages in mind, have ultimately led to his negligence smothering his creativity. Well, sort of, but when you get paid $1,000 to do 100 pages, you should be getting to work yesterday. Housefire. Perhaps among the most consequential events in history, many have speculated that the fire at the Chandler residence may have been caused indirectly by Chris. According to the person who leaked the fire report, the fire appears to have been caused by a spark from an extension cord running from the bathroom door, of which the plastic coating had been rubbed away. The report seems to corroborate this claim, indicating that the fire started from the downstairs bathroom. Chris had run an extension cord from the bathroom to power a Keurig machine in the hallway. Why there's a Keurig machine in the hallway is, with the amount of junk in the passageways, is a good question, which was plugged in at the time of the fire. How much of the blame that Bob shares for allowing the brazen fire hazard to exist, along with the Horde's role in the fire, however, is up for debate. Body. Surprisingly, absolutely nobody. One of the biggest things Chris's negligence has affected is himself. As mentioned plenty of times on this site, he has shown to not take anything close to good care of his hygiene or diet, no doubt causing various health problems that could potentially endanger his very life. One noticeable example is Chris's eating habits, where he rarely eats vegetables or fruit, and when he does, he usually adds something very unhealthy, coating it in sauce, sugar, salt, etc. Also worth noting is his well-known lack of showering, which combined with other factors makes him smell horrid. The causes of Chris's negligence. There are several potential causes of Chris's negligence. Perhaps the most apparent cause is Bob's own negligence. Several house tours of the Chandler residence shined a light on just how serious her hoarding problem had become. Bob seemed to have little regard for the squalor that she and Chris lived in. The hoard seemed to have started many years ago, but absolutely exploded after the death of Bob, who had at least some awareness of just how much of a dump the Chandler residence was. He even commented on this during the infamous "That Is My House" video from August 2009. I think it was about calling Chris's mom a pack rat or something like that. Another contributing factor could possibly be Chris's ego. Chris tends to see himself and everything he creates as flawless. In recent years, he has begun developing an outright God complex. It is entirely possible that this perceived flawlessness prevents Chris from being able to acknowledge any mistake he may make, causing problems for him down the road. These problems he enforces or encounters only further fuel his victim complex. And believe it or not, guys, it's as simple as that, because it literally does sort of come to an end right there. And listen, I could understand that Chris is not necessarily in the realm of rationality or anything like that, but what I do kind of find a little bit bizarre is the fact that Chris will frequently go on tangents to call himself an adult. Chris will continuously say that he is more than capable, but and here's the thing. I think Chris would have been absolutely fine, and Chris absolutely could have just done it if, Chris had accepted responsibility, because that's pretty much the root cause of all the problems we have in these across this entire article, is that Chris's failure to accept responsibility has resulted in responsibility also beginning to relinquish Chris, if that makes sense. Which is, again, all Chris would have had to have done is just say, you know what, I was wrong. Because you could always tell a lot about a person when they admit when they get things wrong. And I might have to do an entire video essay, if you will, about responsibility, because before you realize it, guys, it will become very, very apparent about what happens when you don't look after yourself, and when you let an 8-year-old car only clocking up 110,000 miles and it completely kaputs. Are you kidding me? There is no again, that might be the most striking thing to me personally about watching this, because Chris, are you kidding? 110,000 miles? That's the best you got? What in the hell were you doing, Chris? And I personally couldn't see for myself, because again, I haven't had the results of the post-mortem. But there you go. And with all that being said, I'll see all of you guys next time. So look after yourselves. More than anything else, just look after yourselves and you'll do alright.